Welcome to We the People, talking all things politics from a patriotic, no-nonsense point of view.
Everybody, welcome back to We the People. As always, I'm your host, Skyler the Patriot. So why is Joe Biden pushing so hard to build up a military presence in and around Ukraine to combat what he's calling Russian aggression? Does this stance put America first or America last? All things you need to know about the Ukraine situation on today's show. That is the topic for this week's program. As always, we're ready, we're prepared. A lot of great information coming your way, guys. So stick around and let's get after it. So Ukraine, huge hot button topic right now. Arguably the most important thing going on in the entire world right now is the Ukraine situation involving the United States, Ukraine, and Russia. And here's what we know right now. Russia is mobilizing over 100,000 troops to the Ukraine-Russia border. They've deployed over 140 warships to the Black Sea, which is right along Ukraine's southern border. And China has just flown over 39 fighter jets over Taiwanese airspace, resulting in the arming of Taiwan's missile defense systems and the scrambling of their own jets in Taiwan. We know for a while now that China has wanted to take over Taiwan. We know that Russia has been extremely interested in Ukraine from what we know. And Biden has not stood strong at all with the people of Taiwan, and it's a big threat for them. So Joe Biden's response now to the Russia threat is he's demanding that we send thousands of troops to Ukraine to show them support. And in fact, he just pushed that NATO would now back him on it, and they have. My question is why? Why does Joe Biden find it so important and so necessary to send our troops, our servicemen and women, into harm's way and potentially spark what would be a full-blown war with Russia? Potentially, we could be looking at here the beginning of World War III. And I don't want to overhype this. I want to make sure that's extremely clear. But this is what Biden is doing. We know he has a very bad record, as we've seen so far with Afghanistan crisis, with many other things, our own failed domestic policy. We know that Biden does not truly care about our relations with the rest of the world. It seems like he doesn't have his priorities straight at all, and it's very failed foreign and domestic policy. And it's very confusing to us, and it's especially confusing when we see that Ukraine is just as confused as we are with the entire situation. They're telling Biden, explicitly telling Biden not to send anyone to the Ukraine, that they do not need it, and that there is no reason to evacuate the embassy in Kiev. Which, in fact, they said that U.S. citizens are now safer in Kiev than they are in Los Angeles. Obviously, guys, that is not a good look for us. When we're pushing, which, again, I don't know why, when we have our own problems going on here, we're pushing to get involved in the Ukraine right now, and the Ukraine's saying, look, we don't need you guys. And by the way, your people are safer here than they are in your own country. Not a good look for the United States. Not a good look, certainly not a good look for Gavin Newsom's California. That's a shame. But what I'm really confused on right now, I think a lot of people are, I think you all are, who are watching right now, I'm confused on why we're so focused on the Ukraine-Russia border right now when we have our own invasion going on here at home on our soil, our southern border. Hundreds of thousands of illegal immigrants, some of which who are bringing crime, drug trafficking, gang people, gang members, dangerous gangs like MS-13 who are killing our children in the streets, who are killing people in the streets, resulting in our angel families who we care about so much, who President Trump had talked about before. So we see all this going on. Now, in our southern border, we have our own crisis, our own our own invasion right now. Why are we not focusing on that? But we're so hell-bent on getting involved in Ukraine. I don't know why we're doing that, especially when we know that, I mean, do we even really have that great of a relationship with Ukraine? I mean, I guess, you know, President Trump, President Zelensky, you know, had a good relationship towards the end there of his presidency, but for the most part, Ukraine's definitely a building nation right now. They're a developing nation. I haven't seen in the past, I don't think anybody else has, any evidence that would show that Ukraine really wants us as an ally. I guess they would like to be friendly. I mean, who wouldn't want to be right now than the select few countries? But they're not interested in NATO. They're not interested in our allies, and they're not really interested in becoming allies with us. So I don't really know why we're so hell-bent on getting involved there. And I am convinced that this is not actually about defending the Ukraine. the Ukrainian people at all, but rather that we're trying to defend, that Biden is trying to defend an asset of his because he's corrupt, which is Ukraine itself and what Ukraine has to offer. And Ukraine does have a lot to offer. And if you didn't know this, it's all found in the ground. Ukraine is very, very rich and has abundant reserves of coal, iron ore, natural gas, manganese, salt, oil, graphite, sulfur, kaolin, titanium, nickel, magnesium, timber, and mercury. And in fact, this is why they've had great leverage for such a long time, and I think this is probably why we want to get so involved there. Russia, at one point, was importing 50% of their iron ore from Ukraine. So when I say they're very rich, I don't mean necessarily literally with their GDP, but I mean they have a lot to offer that's in the ground. These are extremely important industrial minerals that are stored in the ground of Ukraine, industrial materials that are important for the rest of the world. As we know, like we said, natural gas, we know that with Hunter Biden and Burisma and all that shady stuff that was going on over there. We're going to get into that in a little bit on this show. But we also know now that Ukraine happens to be the largest country in Europe and has extremely rich and fertile soil that is perfect for farming. And that's the reason why the country in Europe is referred to as the breadbasket of Europe, because they have such fertile soil because of their relationship with where they're at in terms of the Black Sea being right here on their border. And they have two main rivers that follow up through here and a lot of fertile soil there. And we know that this is something that China desperately needs right now. They need more land and more soil for farming. They are really outpacing and outgrowing their own boundaries of their country, which is probably why they have been one of the top owners of farmland in the U.S. for quite some time now. And we also know now that Russia has extreme interest in the resources that are in the ground, not just that, but as well as what Ukraine has access to, which is, like we talked about, the Black Sea. Why is that such an important thing for them? We know Russia has just a little bit, not nearly as much as Ukraine, but a little bit of a portion of the Black Sea where they have a lot of a big important trade port right there that helps them with the rest of Central Asia. But we know now that if Ukraine was to be taken over by Russia, then Russia's control over the Black Sea trade region would more than double their control over the Black Sea trade region. This would then obviously give Russia an extreme advantage over the rest of landlocked Central Asia, because obviously they're landlocked. They don't have access to the Black Sea, not nearly the same access then or advantage in terms of trade, and would then be able to boost Russia's trade with the West and obviously give them that extreme advantage over landlocked Central Asia. And something important here. I've heard recently now from different sources online that bargaining may be Putin's purpose for overinflating tensions and increasing military presence in the Ukrainian region right along the Russia-Ukraine border. And now, as we know, in response to Biden's continued push for our own military presence in Ukraine, Putin is now talking with Cuba to set up, again, another alliance there like we saw under the Soviet Union. So again, now you want to ask yourself, could we be on the brink right now of Cuban Missile Crisis 2.0? I mean, right now, we are definitely seeing, in my opinion, without doubt, a lot of bluffing from both sides, which is actually what we saw a lot towards the end of the Cold War, towards the end of the Cuban Missile Crisis, because those are two world powers. When they start to do this, both of them don't want to back down because they don't want to look stupid on the world stage. Although with Biden looks stupid a lot, but Biden really wants this military presence. And he wants the NATO forces to back him. As we know, they have. They're sending military equipment to Ukraine. Ukraine's like, what the heck? We don't want it. And now, come to find out, NATO actually is in control of the U.S. Navy's super carrier, the USS Harry S. Truman, along with its strike group, which is part of a major exercise that's been going on, I think, for the last year now, called the Neptune Strike 22 in the Mediterranean Sea. So a number of NATO nations, including the United States, are sending weapons and other military equipment to Ukraine, as we just said, and it's all done in response to what the Kremlin's actions are. But again, here, the Ukrainians are asking for the exact opposite. So they're doing this in the guise of saying, hey, we just want to help you out, Ukraine. We're just here to help. And the Ukraine is like, well, why are you doing this? because we've been seeing this for quite some time now. They don't want military accumulation or escalation in the country, and say it's completely unnecessary. And I cannot stress that enough. They do not want it. They don't want us there. And in fact, they're now saying, and this is very important, they're now saying that the destabilization in Ukraine is actually being fueled and caused by the Biden administration and not Russia. Wow, think about that. So what are we doing there then? And I'm not a fan of the UN or NATO meddling in our domestic affairs here on U.S. soil, and I want you guys to know that. I don't think they should be here. I'm not a fan of globalism. None of us are. We don't want them there. I do not want the UN and NATO here focusing on our domestic policy. This is supposed to be an alliance that we focus on in our relations with other countries, not here on U.S. soil. We don't want them here. And I think Ukraine honestly feels the same way. I think because they're developing right now, they said, hey, leave us alone. We want to get on our own 2 feet by ourselves. Leave us alone, Russia. Leave us alone, China. And leave us alone, United States. They don't want our support. They want to be left alone. Yet both sides, the U.S., with the help of now NATO, and now Russia on the other side, they will not budge. And why? I believe, as do the experts in this area, they feel that Russia, just looking at it from the Russian side here, is playing a weak hand, if you will, here, only to turn around and then hopefully be able to bargain at the trading table here their way into better trade to gain more control and more access to the world stage in terms of their relationship with the rest of the world for trade. And as we know now, Russia has grown closer and closer to China. As of last year, Russia removed the U.S. dollar assets from their national wealth fund and increased their share of Chinese yuan. So potentially very dangerous Russia-China relations there. I don't really think they're necessarily growing closer to us. I think Russia just wants to establish themselves more and more and more as a world dominant superpower. I mean, they have been for a long time, but I think right now you're seeing a race to be number one again. But my question is, why would Russia and China, with all these threats from Biden, we're going to send in 8,500 troops or more, we're going to sanction you, why does Russia and China not appear to be afraid of anything that Biden is saying? Why do they appear to be unbothered? And I am 100% convinced that the reason they don't fear him is because they know he's weak. As we've seen, he has very, very weak foreign policy. And also even deeper here, they know that Biden is extremely corrupt. He's been corrupt in the Ukraine. He's been corrupt in Russia and corrupt in China. We know this for a fact. And they know Biden's allegiance is only to himself and to his corrupt crime family. And the Ukraine has been his family's get-rich, dirty playground for quite some time now, the Ukraine has. We're going to get into that in just a second here. Biden axed, this is talking about his foreign policy here in relationship to his domestic policy, how there's a double standard here. Biden axed the Keystone XL pipeline. We were energy independent, guys. We were energy independent. And now we're dependent on places like Russia and China for our energy when we didn't have to be that way. Why? He axed the Keystone XL pipeline, but okayed Russia's Nord Stream 2 pipeline from Germany to Russia, which is why Germany right now is staying out of it. Germany and France right now are going, whoa, hey, I don't want anything to do with this. Maybe we should be doing the same thing unless we have an alternative agenda. So axes that Keystone XL pipeline, canceling our energy independence, now making us dependent on places like Russia and China, and okays that Nord Stream 2 pipeline. Bad foreign policy, bad domestic policy. We also know Hunter Biden, in terms of corruption here, $3.5 million from the former mayor of Moscow's wife. I mean, that should be a major red flag there with that and our relationship with Russia, Biden's relationship with Russia. We also know the Hunter sat on the board of numerous foreign energy companies with no experience at all, but was paid tens upon tens of millions of dollars. So again, another red flag, no experience, tens of millions of dollars. Burisma, others from Russia, China. We know Hunter received over $30 million in business deals from individuals with direct, mind you, direct ties to the highest levels of Chinese intelligence. Again, major red flag there with China. Hunter, now, mind you, he's the artist now. He's I don't get that at all. Again, totally ripe for corruption. Sells his art to China. A big buyer of his fake artwork. I'd like to see some of it. I'm sure it's awful. The Penn Biden Center at the University of Pennsylvania receives millions of dollars in anonymous donations from China. Tens of millions of dollars there. So that's another dead giveaway. Something is wrong. Something's very, very bad with Biden's foreign policy here. Probably a compromised guy. And then, as we all know, the famous line, these are the people that are giving the 10% for the big guy. Remember that, right? We can't forget about that. And here's a question worth asking in regard to this, in regard to the 10% for the big guy. Who exactly is the big guy? And I just was thinking about this. Is Joe Biden the big guy? Maybe yes, that's the context we've known it so far. Or perhaps, do we have multiple big guys? Is the big guy just a label that we're using for multiple different people? Perhaps is the United States government the big guy? We need to know the answer to those questions. Who exactly is the big guy, and who are they getting the 10% from? And what we know, these are deals that are being made exclusively with individuals located in Russia and China, and involving the Biden crime family. So they don't fear this administration. They do not fear Joe Biden, because they know that while Daddy was the vice president, he put Hunter, made sure Hunter was put in these positions that would help enrich him and his family so they could profit big time off of being corrupt. In where? Oh, the Ukraine. So, what exactly are we trying to defend in the Ukraine? They don't fear Joe Biden. Russia and China do not fear Joe Biden. You got to drive this point home, because they know that Joe Biden is corrupt. They know that they own Joe Biden. So why then is he pushing so hard for a military presence in Ukraine when these are his corrupt millionaire buddies here in Russia and China that he would potentially be facing? Why is he pushing so hard for a military presence against those people? Unless it's all acting, perhaps. I wouldn't put it past them to do that. And I think it's because this, like I said, has been their dirty, dirty, corrupt playground. If the Ukrainians wanted us there, and they truly felt that they were in danger, wouldn't they be crying out for our help? I mean, think about that. I mean, if we or someone else, if you, just look at an individual level, if you were in danger and you truly needed somebody's help, wouldn't you say, hey, help me? Ukraine is doing the exact opposite. They're telling us to stay the hell out, to leave them alone. So I'm going to ask then, if we know that Ukraine does not want us there, that they are blaming us for causing destabilization, that they're telling us that we are now causing the escalation, that they do not want us there, that Biden is making the problems there worse. Who are the real invaders? With all that in consideration here, who are the real invaders of Ukraine? Is it the United States? Is it Joe Biden's administration? Is it his policy? Are we the ones invading Ukraine? Think about that. Really think about that for a minute. It's not going to sound ridiculous at all. This isn't about protecting the people of Ukraine itself. It's about defending Biden's secret asset, his hidden dirty playground, protecting his interests in Ukraine. That 10% for the big guy. And he also wants to now determine who gets to be Ukraine's, for lack of better terms, pimp. Who gets to be the pimp of Ukraine? That's to say, this is a battle between superpowers right now of who gets to control the Ukraine and all those assets we talked about earlier. Who gets to be their boss? Who gets to be the bully here? Who gets to own them? This country that's just now trying to establish itself. Who gets to be the owner of Ukraine and tell them what they can and cannot do with their assets, and potentially just strip them from it all and create these dirty deals that we've seen time and time again with Joe Biden and his billionaire buddies who are corrupt, and his son. Wouldn't it be convenient now if his son all of a sudden got another position in Ukraine? I wouldn't be surprised by that at all. But that's what I think is going on. This is not about the Ukrainian people. This is about trying to determine who gets to be the boss of Ukraine, control those assets, who gets to be Ukraine's pimp. It's ridiculous. But we already know what Biden's true feelings towards Ukraine are. How he treats them. How he treats us. His own people. What he thinks about the Ukrainian people. This right here, this clip, it'd be a shame if this went super mega viral. Again, this is Biden's foreign policy in Ukraine. This is it.
I got Ukraine, and I remember going over, convincing our team, or others too, convincing us that we should be providing for loan guarantees. And I went over for, I guess, the 12th, 13th time to Kyiv, and I was supposed to announce that there was another $1 billion loan guarantee. And I had gotten a commitment from Poroshenko and from Yatsenyuk that they would take action against the state prosecutor, and they didn't. So they said they were walking out to press conference. I said, no, I said, we're not going to give you the $1 billion. They said, you have no authority. You're not the president. The president said. I said, call him. I said, I'm telling you, you're not getting the $1 billion. I said, you're not getting the $1 billion. I'm going to be leaving here. And I think it was, what, 6 hours? I said, I'm leaving in 6 hours. If the prosecutor's not fired, you're not getting the money. Well, son of a bitch. Got fired.
Guys, it does not get any more clear than that. 100% right in your face. Just bam. There it is. 100% quid pro quo. Video evidence right there. And remember, that is something, quid pro quo, is something the left impeached President Trump for. Even though what he did was nothing wrong. Congratulatory phone call, as we've heard. That wasn't a quid pro quo, but they impeached him for it. But what Biden has done here is clearly a quid pro quo. We have it on video. So why is nothing being done about it? Why is he not being held accountable? Why is he not being impeached? Where are our leaders at? Why? This is on video, clear as day. In that video, those are the words of someone who's acting like a mob boss. These are not the words of someone who truly values Ukraine's sovereignty and independence. Someone who seeks out Ukraine as wanting to be an ally of ours. Somebody who really wants them to have an allegiance to us, to become friends, to become an ally. But rather, these are the words of someone who sees Ukraine as a tool for money, for power, and corruption. Biden is clearly talking in that video, like I said, as if he were a mob boss. He wants to control that country for his own gain, for his own enrichment, for his own power. These are not the words of someone who wants, like he campaigned on, peace, unity, and healing. It was all a joke. And Biden's not the only one who behaves this way. As we've seen now, Nancy Pelosi and her son, Paul Pelosi Jr., they've carried out a number of dirty business deals in Ukraine. I mean, 100%, guys, there is without question that our politicians, as we look at it, are knee-deep in corruption in Ukraine. So I'm kind of curious, are they trying to cover their own tracks there? Or are they just trying to secure an asset? But this was something that we had talked about, that we were sounding the alarm on in terms of Nancy Pelosi and Paul Pelosi Jr., her directing him to conduct dirty business deals in Ukraine. This is something that we were talking about, sounding the alarm on over a year ago on a U.S. Patriot Society special called The Truth Marches On, Pelosi, Ukraine, Corruption. I want to play you a clip of it. Here it is. But let's take a look at Nancy Pelosi and her son Paul Pelosi's side of the story and their corruption. Paul Pelosi Jr. was a board member of Visk Oil and an executive at its related company, Energy Lab, which was involved in energy business in Ukraine. This promotional video is from 2013 and includes Nancy Pelosi discussing her efforts in office to push for clean energy, followed by a promotional statement from Paul. But here's the cover-up. The leftist organization, Snopes.com, claims that Energy Labs never did dealings in the Ukraine, when in fact Energy Labs' own YouTube video completely contradicts this statement and says, I'll use a very brief amount of this quote, it's a little lengthy, says, that helped to secure the rights to build a plant for the production of SH boxes in the Ukraine. In Ukraine. Completely debunks Snopes.com's statement. But that's that. But let's look at who Visk Oil is owned by. And as of 2010, it listed two managers, Strawn, David Strawn, and an individual named Sergei Sorokin, based in Moscow, Russia. Strawn is business partners at Sandhills Partners with John Ellis, cousin of Jeb and George W. Bush, according to SEC documents. But what exactly did Visk Oil do with one of their managers being a man from Moscow, Russia? Well, it says here in an article done by Patrick Howley as January 29th, 2020, said Viscoil employed Russians to establish contacts with government officials and key players in the oil and gas industry and to cultivate a network of prominent contacts, including politicians, allowing the company's emergence into high-level political arena. Some of their employees' profiles can be found stating this on LinkedIn, where they claim to have been graduates of Russian universities. Not that anything's wrong with that, but it's more so what they did while they were employed with Viscoil and Energy Labs and what Paul Pelosi did. But let's look a little more recently, see what Paul Pelosi did and what his dealings were. As of 2017, as an executive director of CGI, the Corporate Governance Initiative, he traveled in 2017 to the Ukraine to discuss a youth soccer sponsorship program with the Ukrainian government and touted an endorsement from the World Sports Alliance. Here we have, I believe this is a fourth company now, Viscoil, Energy Labs, CGI, and now WSA, World Sports Alliance. Well, who is the World Sports Alliance? The World Sports Alliance is not who they claim to be, not a sports alliance at all, when in fact, according to the FBI and the DOJ, have been discovered to be a diamond mining scam and also a cryptocurrency scam, whose owner, who was run by Asa St. Clair, a business friend, or he claimed to be a business friend, and a close personal friend of Paul Pelosi Jr., who is now facing 20 years in prison and being prosecuted by the Southern District of New York. And conveniently for you, America, videos of the 2017 CGI WSA youth soccer sponsorship program are being removed from the internet. So you can't find them. If it actually is about youth soccer, why would these videos be removed? Unless they're trying to hide something. But I encourage you, don't take my word for this. Maybe take Paul Pelosi's ex-girlfriend, who was interviewed by the FBI, which she did state, I will quote, that Paul Pelosi, when he does business deals, conducts them by stating that he is the office of Nancy Pelosi, that's who he is representing. Now, everything that has been included so far, that's been stated this far, if he's a private citizen, sure it's wrong, sure it's fraud, but now it's taken to another level, almost the level of what they've tried to accuse President Trump of doing for quid pro quo, when he says that he's part of Nancy Pelosi's office. The corruption in this country runs quite deep.
There you go. I mean, as you can see, like I said, over a year ago, we're sounding the alarm on this. Corruption, guys, is no new foreign policy for the left in Ukraine. And in that matter, it's really not a new foreign policy for them at all, just in general. If we build an unnecessary military presence in Ukraine when the people don't want us there, isn't that a lot like what we did in the Middle East for many, many years with the endless war policy we had there? There was certainly a lot of corruption. There were a lot of dirty deals that were made in the Middle East. A lot of politicians, guys, a lot of corrupt Washington establishment politicians made a lot of money off of the Middle East, off of fundraising and other things. So all of a sudden we pull out of Afghanistan, right? Irresponsibly, mind you, total disaster. Pull out of there. We pull out of the Middle East. And now they're like, wait a second. Our poll numbers here suck. We're not doing good in the polls. We're losing money. We're bleeding out. Hang on. The jig might be up. We need another endless war right now, so maybe it'll be Ukraine. We already know Ukraine's got a lot of assets that we want, so we can conduct some more deals. And then we can rob the people blind by pushing a stupid war that's completely unneeded, an endless war now in Ukraine. Maybe that'll be our next playground for the next however many, God only knows how many next years. This certainly doesn't put America first. It didn't in the Middle East. We should have been out of there responsibly a long time ago. Key words there. Keyword responsibly. Should have been out of there. Endless wars. America last. Self-enrichment. Those three things. That's the foreign policy of the corrupt Washington establishment. And this affects Republicans and Democrats alike. So if you happen to be somebody who's center or center left watching this video, this is not about, hey, Republican versus Democrat. No, this is about you and I. This is about us, we the people, making things better for us. If they're doing this, all I want to do,
All our organization wants to do is so, hey, this is what they're doing here. They're telling us and they're showing us all of this information over here and playing sleight of hand on us and conducting these back room, under the table, shady deals that put you and I last. That's what happened in the Middle East, and I think in fact, I know that that's what's been going on in the Ukraine, and now I think that could be what's going to happen now in Ukraine with this whole Russia escalation and what Biden's trying to do. And we know now, as it did in the Middle East, it's hurting our economy. The Dow just fell over 1,000 points. It's been now using as a distractionary tactic to push us away from looking at our own problems here at home, our own border crisis, as we talked about earlier, which is just continues to just get even worse day by day. Now this vax mandate on truckers crossing the U.S. borders in and out of Canada into the U.S., in and out of Mexico into the U.S., which takes up a lot of our trade. Very, very big issue there. And in fact, our trade with both Canada and Mexico makes up 28% of the world's entire trade. So this is not just a United States issue, guys. This is a global economic problem. If you thought the supply chain has been bad so far, you wait and see what happens if we continue to do that. And then imagine what will happen if, even worse yet, this throws us into potentially what could be another world war. Like I talked about, these superpowers now, United States, Russia, and China could all be going at it. Not going to be good. I hope and pray that's not going to be the case. But I wouldn't put it past this guy. I would not put this past Joe Biden, a stupid, ignorant fool with 47 years of bad, corrupt experience to do this to our country. And I'm going to leave you here with this final point because I'm kind of running along here. But Russia is posturing, as we know, by mobilizing their military to its border with Ukraine. But Ukraine obviously does not feel that that's abnormal. Says it's been happening for over a year now, this buildup, and they said it's cyclical. They kind of do it all the time, and they don't see the need for escalation or evacuation of our troops. But Biden, however, similar to his Afghanistan evacuation disaster, we're going to call it what it is on this show, it was a disaster, a crisis. It's tragic, very sad, and it was caused by his incompetence and his stupid foreign policy again. Now he wants Americans in Ukraine, for no reason, mind you, to evacuate by finding their own way home on commercial flights. Ukraine says that's completely unnecessary. Says there's no reason to do that. But again, if we do see it as a threat, okay, fine. Then let's just go ahead and pull our people out. We don't need to send troops there, but if we're going to pull them out, let's go ahead and do it the responsible way. Let's send our people over there to make sure they get out. Let's have it be funded by our government, getting our own people out, our own citizens, our own ambassadors, officials, you name it, out of Ukraine. I mean, how ridiculous for Biden to say that they should do it on commercial flights on their own. It's up to you. Hey, guys, the ship's on fire potentially over there. Good luck. Good luck to you. That's what he did in Afghanistan. That's why we had our servicemen and women die. That's why we had many, many Americans die there unnecessarily, who are still trapped in that country, and Biden's not doing anything about it. How ridiculous and irresponsible. You would think he would have learned his lesson the first time in Afghanistan. So why is Biden pushing so hard to do that when Ukraine says it's safe there? They said we're safer there than we are in LA. What's the point, Joe? And if you're going to do it the right way. And again, why is Biden so gung-ho on sending our troops into Ukraine, even though the Ukrainians don't want us there? They don't want us there at all. And they don't want our support. They don't need our troops there. But Biden's insisting that we do it anyway. Gung-ho on it. So my question is Biden perhaps the one who wants to control Ukraine's resources, what they have in the ground, all those things we talked about earlier? Is he the one who wants to control their portion of the Black Sea, maybe for his own gain, or maybe work out some kind of a deal where he gets a cut of the action, another 10% there? Who knows what Biden's up to? But we do know who Biden is loyal to. It's not we the American people or the people of Ukraine. It's to himself. It's to his crime family. To his establishment buddies who are corrupt. We know who he's made deals with. We know what Biden values. We know his irresponsible foreign policy that we'll continue to hammer on and expose to you, the American people who deserve to know what he's all about and what he does. And we know the way that he's treated Ukraine in the past. So again, I'll ask here, with all of these things considered, understanding that the Ukraine doesn't want us there, doesn't want us to send our military, doesn't want our aid, and they're saying that we are making the problem worse and not Russia.
all of that considered, who's the real invader here? Who is it? America. We need to stand strong with our allies. No doubt. But we also need to put America first, no matter what. And we need to do what's best for our people, our situations, our policies here domestically, and our future. But if we are going to help out our allies, what we need to be willing to do is actually listen to our allies and hear them when they say that, hey, we don't need your support, we don't need your military. We need to listen to them when they say that. To do anything else, to occupy, because let's call it like it is, to occupy their country anyway, against their will, mind you, to put our own people at risk, it's highly suspicious. And it should be questioned accordingly. And in fact, if you ask me, it sounds a lot like an invasion. Not aid, but an invasion. Occupying a country against their will. They don't want us there. And make that clear. And like I said, this is a nonpartisan issue. Republicans, Democrats alike, we should be asking about this. This concerns all of us. It's okay to ask questions. You don't understand that. In fact, it's patriotic to ask questions. It involves all of us because these are our soldiers' lives on the line here. Our brave men and women in uniform. We don't need to put them in harm's way unnecessarily like we did for years in the Middle East. These are our soldiers. This is our money. And this is our safety that's all on the line. So let's ask some questions here as we close out. What is Biden doing? What are his motives? What's going on behind the scenes? Because Lord knows something is with that guy. Is he trying to cover up his corruption in Ukraine before it potentially now gets exposed? That'd be interesting. Is he trying to perhaps conduct more dirty deals? Wouldn't put that past him. Or perhaps is he trying to add to his list of incompetent policy failures? None of those things would surprise me. But I think I know, and I think you do too, what exactly Joe Biden is up to. I think we know what his agenda is and what his stance is on this entire situation, what he wants to do in Ukraine. America, these are the questions that we need to be asking, and these are the questions that we, the American people, deserve answers to, and we need to make sure that we get them and hold these people accountable. And I'll ask again, all these things considered, who is the real invader? And I'll leave you with that. I'm Skyler the Patriot, and until next time, always remember, it's we, the people.